rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave. They were like mountains that stood in our way, but he came and he died and he rose. Those giants are dead now. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away. Faith so weak that we could barely pray, but he heard every word, every whisper. Now those altars in the wilderness tell the story of his faithfulness. Never once did he fail, and he never will. This is our God, this is who he is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but Jesus. Who pulled me out of that pit? He did, he did. Who paid for all of our sin? Nobody but Jesus. Who rescued me from that grave? Yahweh, Yahweh. Who gets the glory and praise? Nobody but. This is our God, this is what he does. He loves us. This is our God, this is what he does. He saves us. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. He bore the cross, beat the grave. Let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Lord, that you bore it all for us, God. And we have the power and the freedom in Jesus' name to declare over the enemy, you have no say in my life. You have no say. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. Holy, holy is your name. Oh, we worship you, Lord. Oh, we thank you, Lord. You're here with us right now. come? Will you meet me here again? Oh, Jesus. 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
Going to lead us in our responsive reading this morning. We'll be reading out of the book of Psalm, chapter 145, verses 10 through 19. The words will appear on the screen. If you all would read the odd verses, I'll read the evens, and we can conclude with the last verse together. Verse 10. All of your works will thank you, Lord, and your faithful followers will praise you.
They will speak of the glory of your kingdom. They will give examples of your power.
They will tell about your mighty deeds, about the majesty and glory of your reign.
For your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. You rule throughout all generations. The Lord always keeps his promises. He is gracious in all he does.
The Lord helps the fallen and lifts those bent beneath their loads.
The eyes of all look to you in hope. You give them their food as they need it.
When you open your hand, you satisfy the hunger and thirst of every living thing.
The Lord is righteous in everything he does. He is filled with kindness.
The Lord is close to all who call on him. Yes, to all who call on him in truth. All together. He grants the desires of those who hear him.
He hears their cries for help and rescues them.
Continue our worship.
Yes, thank you, Jesus. We have such a good God. Amen. search for all eternity, Lord, and find there is none like you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
Lord God, as I said at the opening, feel your presence here today, Lord, in this room. And we come here thankful for the opportunity to be together, Lord, as a community with common faith in you, God, and for you hearing our cry and coming to meet us in this space, God. Thank you for your grace and your love, Lord. We pray for those who are in a conflict zone, Lord. There's so much turmoil outside of these walls, Lord, in this world. And as we just sung, those who cry for you, Lord, and we ask that you hear them and you offer them some comfort, Lord, spiritually but physically as well, God. And if your word hasn't reached those in most desperate need, God, we pray that there's a messenger, someone who's faithful in your love, Lord, who finds those that need you most. Lord, we pray for all the athletes and the spectators in Paris, Lord, that stage can be an example of unity for our world, Lord, that people of different nations, of different tongues, of different faiths can come together and be at peace, Lord, and that may be an example for all those there and all those watching from afar, God. And we love you. We thank you for this day and this time together. Praise be to the God and Father, our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Amen. Hey, everybody. Again, Andrew, good to see you all. We're going to take just a couple minutes to meet those around us. If you see a new face, please make them feel welcomed. And maybe say hello to someone you haven't seen in a while. We're going to take 5 minutes, and then we'll be back with some announcements. Just a couple really quick announcements before we dive back into worship. So, those of you who have been here before, you have heard this, but for those who are visiting, want to just let you know we do have some connection cards spread throughout. If you're a new visitor, if you have a prayer request, information change, or anything, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to pray for you. Pastor Ryan promises not to spam you every day with texts and emails, but Rob may. No, I'm kidding. So we would love to hear from you. You can fill it out, or you can also scan that on your phone and do the same. So for just a couple announcements. Today we have our annual summer picnic. It is at Revere Beach. So on the Blue Line, Revere Beach T stop, directly across the street, across the crosswalk. We'll be there setting up at 4 p.m. You are encouraged to bring your own food if you want to eat. There's a bunch of restaurants in the area, or you can just for takeout, or you can bring something from home. It's just going to be a great time. There's going to be some baptisms there, and just would love to hang out together outside of our normal hours and just continue to fellowship together. So hope to see you today, 4 p.m., Revere Beach. And then last announcement. So we're going to be pushing out a promotional video in the fall about Anchor across our various social channels, and would love some people to participate. It's going to be a 60-second or less little interview about why you like Anchor. So it should be pretty easy. I think we already have a couple volunteers, but if you would like to participate, just come see Ryan at some point. We're going to be shooting the video in the next couple weeks. So see Pastor Ryan, and we'd love to have you participate. I want to just personally thank everybody for their faithful giving. It allows us to do what we do here. It allows us to spread the good news outside of these walls, both in the city of Boston, which is so important to us here at Anchor, but also abroad through our mission network. Couldn't do that without the faithful giving of all of your tithes and offerings. Really appreciate it. We try to make it as easy as possible. You can see on the screen. And again, just thank you. If you don't mind, please standing to read the liturgy of giving together. The measure of our wealth is contentment. We leave this world with what we bring into it, nothing. The love of money is the root of various evils and sorrow. When we have enough, may our contentment grow, as the allure of earthly riches is a trap which results in ruin and destruction. Instead, let us store up eternal treasure that cannot be destroyed. May we be known as obedient and generous. Our God, who promises to open the windows of heaven and pour out blessings beyond our needs, cannot be outgiven. So we give cheerfully, fully trusting our needs to be met according to his glorious riches given to us in Christ Jesus. Thank you. Please remain standing as we will be reading our teaching text.
Thank you. Today's teaching text comes from Proverbs 16, verses 10 through 20. Hear the word of the Lord. The king speaks with divine wisdom. He must never judge unfairly. The Lord demands accurate scales and balances. He sets the standards for fairness. A king detests wrongdoing, for his rule is built on justice. The king is pleased with words from righteous lips. He loves those who speak honestly. The anger of the king is a deadly threat. The wise will try to appease it. When the king smiles, there is life. His favor refreshes like a spring rain. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and good judgment than silver. The path of the virtuous leads away from evil. Whoever follows that path is safe. Pride goes before destruction, and haughtiness before a fall. Better to live humbly with the poor than to share plunder with the proud. Those who listen to instruction will prosper. Those who trust the Lord will be joyful. The word of the Lord.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
You just pop that right there. Thanks. Well, good morning, my friends. It's really good to be back together. I was on vacation 2 weeks ago, and I was back last Sunday just hosting a little bit. But then immediately after church on Sunday, Pastor Rob and I left for a retreat in Philadelphia. And so this feels like the first real day back after a pretty significant kind of break. And it feels really good to be back. I've missed you all, and I hope that that you are joining us today, having had a wonderful few weeks. And yeah, it's really, really good to be together. Today we're kind of wading back into Proverbs again, as we've been doing for the last few weeks. And I thought it might be helpful for us just to circle back again, or maybe it's just helpful for me because I've been out for a few weeks, to circle back again on exactly why we're here in Proverbs in the first place. Our desire as a teaching team is that the series wouldn't just create learning opportunities, but lasting change. And lasting change not just in our heads, but that change would move from our minds into our hearts and into our souls. And you might remember from a few weeks ago, Proverbs is one of the 3 wisdom books in Scriptures. And it's written with the intent of real life experience. It's a deep dive into humanity and personhood, the kind that we face and move through every single day. Theologian Derek Kidner describes Proverbs as this: Proverbs helps make the bad people good and the good people nice. And that's not an exhaustive description by any means, but it is helpful, I think, by way of simplicity. So as we approach wisdom from a modern mindset, there's a certain subjectivity to wisdom. You've probably experienced this before, maybe with a parent or a friend. What one person thinks to be wise, another person thinks to be foolish. And so Proverbs is a great guide for us to wise living. Now, just some background on kind of where I'm coming from this morning. Leadership theory, leadership development, there's something that I'm passionate about. I have a master's in business leadership, and if it had not been for the still small voice of God, I would probably not be sitting here this morning in this seat, but I would probably be working as some sort of business consultant or internal consulting in a company. It's something that I love and I'm passionate about. My vocational life would probably be somewhere in the realm of leadership development. And so today's teaching is something I've been interacting with in some form or another for many years. I've even had a book project kind of lurking in the background with some of this information that we're talking about today. I want to say this: the Bible has a lot to say about leading people. The Bible has a lot to say about many things. Our conversation today is centered around the idea of what makes a leader worth following. What makes a leader worth following? So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of move through our passage today, and I'm just going to share some thoughts. I do want to make a few things clear. As we kind of lean into this passage, there are a few core beliefs that I have that I've developed with the help of the Scriptures when it comes to leadership. And so I just kind of want to move through these first a little bit. Number 1, leadership is learned. See, anyone can be a leader. In fact, every single person is probably a leader already, whether it's in your work, in your family, or perhaps in this season, you are just leading yourself right now. You are already a leader. I love Randall's story that he shared last week in his teaching about how, well, I should say I didn't love the story because it was a sad story, but it was a good story of how when he was a child and he was playing sports, there was a parent behind him, who said, you know, the one thing about Randall is he'll never be a great leader, but he's a great follower. First, what a perfect example to the power of words, as we heard last week. But second, I would argue that that person was on the right track, kind of. Not about Randall, but about the fact that the greatest leaders start by being great followers. And third, I would add that, boy, did Randall prove that person wrong. Because we would not be here today if it were not for you. And this church would not exist without your leadership. So, if you're wondering on if there are any great leaders in our midst, he's right there. Number 2, leadership is service. See, bad leaders view leadership as service to themselves. My followers exist to serve me. Great leaders, Christ-like leaders, recognize that leading others is a personal determination to serve others. To choose to lead, as Proverbs is instructing us, is, and I promise we're going to get there, it's to choose love and to choose service over any other thing. So stop me if you've heard this before, if you've been a part of Anchor Church for a while. Anchor Church is a community of love who serve God by serving others. This is who we, this community that goes by the name of Anchor Church, chooses to be. It is a choice. Third, leadership is transformational. Now, if you've ever had the opportunity to follow a great leader, you have probably experienced this for yourself. The transformational process of being led well is a wonderful and an illuminating experience. Servant leadership, serving others, as I just mentioned, it's inherently transformational. It transforms both the leader and the follower. Stop me if you've heard this before. Anchor Church is a community of love who serve God by serving others and are transformed by God to transform our world. So, as the formal leader of our community here, one of my deepest desires is that in the moment at the end of each and every one of our gatherings, as whoever our host is directs us, that as we leave this space and we enter each of our mission fields, the places where God has called us and God has placed us for His goodness and for His work, that when that happens, we would internalize our own opportunities to lead others. And that not only would we internalize it, but that we would respond as the prophet Isaiah did when he wrote in Isaiah 6:8. I heard the Lord asking, whom should I send as a messenger to this people? Who will go for us? What does he say? Here I am. Here I am. Send me. I was getting out of the car the other day, and I had a moment as I was walking into a coffee shop, and I wasn't meeting anybody. I wasn't going to see anybody. I was just going to get some work done. And as I got out of the car, I had this moment where I said, here I am, Lord. Send me. I'm just going into a coffee shop, right? I'm just going to see an employee of this Cafe Nero. Coffee wasn't that great. Probably not. No one's surprised. But as I was moving into that space, there was a holy moment there where I felt like God spoke to me and said, who am I sending? Who are you in all of this? And the most appropriate response, not just as leaders, but as followers of Jesus, which is more important, our response is me. Here I am, Lord. Send me. So as we begin to move into this passage from Proverbs this morning, I really believe that the teachings found here are integral not only to being sent into the world, but also important as to how we follow in this world. See, Proverbs 16 Sorry, my mic is throwing me off. I just got to fix it. We'll just acknowledge that I'm fixing it, and then we'll move on. It won't have to happen again. All right, good. So Proverbs 16. It's a biblical description of a person worth following. As we just read in the New Living Translation, the conversation is centered around a king, the behavior of a king. So as we move through the passage, I think what we'll find is it's not just a blueprint for others. It's not just a blueprint for a king of God's people, but it's a blueprint for us. May it serve as the picture that we put next to our mirror so that when we see ourselves, we compare it to that image. May it also serve as the sketch paper that we hold up to any person that we have the opportunity to follow. That when we choose to follow someone, we would hold this passage up against them to see, do they line up with the instruction of Proverbs? If they don't, maybe it's a sign to reevaluate if this is a person worth following. So to the text. And I'm doing something I've never done before, I realized. I've found Eugene Peterson's The Message translation as I've been moving through this text this week to be really wonderful, to be really not just a pleasant read, but sort of illuminating just by way of a different direction. And so, as we move through the text today, I thought it might be weird if our teaching text was read in the Message. It might catch us all off guard. So we use the New Living Translation for our teaching text. But as I move through our teaching today, I'm actually going to be reading from the Message translation. I hope that's okay. Please don't throw me out. If you do, just wait till I finish, then throw me out, all right? So, we begin. Proverbs 16:10. I love this. A good leader motivates, doesn't mislead, doesn't exploit. See, as we hold up Proverbs 16's image of a leader worth following, we find an interesting starting point to this passage. A good leader motivates, but not by misleading or exploiting. There's an interesting parallel here in the Old Testament of Proverbs with some of the most famous sentences in the New Testament written by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians. Paul writes, you've probably heard this before at a wedding or on a wall at Hobby Lobby or in someone's dining room. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. So what's described here, it gently mirrors the opening idea, Proverbs 16:10. See, a good leader, a leader worth following, will not mislead, will not exploit, but will motivate. To motivate without misleading, without exploiting, requires love. For true love, as Paul wrote, does not demand in its own way. Love is the bedrock foundation of all leadership. Love is the soul of any leader worth following. See, the best leaders, they genuinely love other people, not because of what they can do for them or provide to them, but simply because they exist. We take our lead from Jesus Christ, who loves us simply because we are. Let's try a short exercise really quick. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes for just a moment. I'll do it as well. And I want you to think of the best leader that you ever followed. Perhaps their title was not one of leader. Perhaps their title was of mother, father, friend, grandmother, grandfather. Okay, open your eyes. You have that person? You have that person in your brain? I have a question. From your experience, did they treat others differently if their title changed or if they had a success? Did they withhold love from others until those others did what they wanted them to do? Did the level of their love change depending on the result? I hope that the answer to those is no. I have a feeling that whoever they were, whoever is in your mind's eye right now, I have a feeling that they popped into your brain because something about them loved you unconditionally, loved you wholeheartedly, and you also saw that they did the same for others. I would hope, and they probably had very high standards, but the standards that they held were completely unrelated to the level of their love. In short, they probably loved a lot like Jesus loves. So to put it as simply as possible, Jesus loves us. Jesus calls us to love each other. Quite simply, it is how we will be known as followers of Christ. We must be leaders who love without strings attached, without guilt. You see, the loving leader, they hold the standard, but they push us to bring our best. They engage in transformative relationships. There's a shared understanding that no matter the season, no matter the task, no matter whether it is a tremendous success or a spectacular failure, their love is consistent and their love is true. Just as importantly, spiritually healthy leaders also demonstrate the same love to themselves. I want to note, they are not in love with themselves. That is narcissism. The narcissist seeks to mislead, to motivate through exploitation. What Proverbs, and really the Bible as a whole, paints as the picture of a leader worth following is definitely not that. But a leader worth following does afford themselves the same grace, the same forgiveness, and the same love to themselves as they offer unconditionally to others. See, after all, I'd ask the question, how can we love others well if we don't know how to love ourselves well? A leader can only affirm the unique identity of those who are following them if they first affirm the image of God in their own self. See, the type of leader that King Solomon is describing leads from a heart full of love. I particularly enjoy the writings of James Kouzis and Barry Posner. They actually came out of Harvard Business School. I've got some wonderful books on leadership and really the soul of leadership. And they have this phrase that they use quite often. They refer to leadership as a, quote, an affair of the heart. Leadership starts with the heart first. And when leadership starts with our heart and starts with love, it also leads to honesty, which moves us actually into verse 11, where it says, God cares about honesty in the workplace. I love this. Your business is his business. See, within the greater context of Proverbs, we must remember that it was written by King Solomon. King Solomon, son of King David, who is regarded as the wisest that has ever existed. He was not only the wisest of all of Israel's kings, but the wisest in history. And so it's interesting then what lives underneath the surface here. Again, that phrase, your business is his business. Again, from theologian Derek Kidner. He teaches that this is a reminder to the king of what is demanded of them. The Old Testament lends no support to the idea that because the king is king, the king can do no wrong. Rather, Solomon, he writes that the king is under an individual authority. That authority is the God of the universe. Therefore, in the midst of all of this is a thread for every single person, every single leader to follow. No matter how great your authority is, no matter how much power you wield, no matter how many people line up behind you, not even no matter of whose authority you fall under, you are not judge, jury, and ruler. Though you may answer to a boss, though you may answer to a stakeholder or a CEO or a shift manager, ultimately you answer to God. I answer to God. Your business is His business. Your business is His business. Again, an Old Testament king was the power of the land. The Old Testament is full of examples of Old Testament kings who started to believe their own press clippings, who started believing that I am in charge, I am the authority. What happens when we forget that our business is His business? I would challenge you to simply take a gander through the Old Testament and look what happens when the kings of Israel forget that those kings have a king, that those lords have a Lord. So we would do well to remember that the leaders that we choose to follow and ourselves as we look to grow in leadership, our business is God's business. Therefore, as the text continues in verse 12, good leaders abhor wrongdoing of all kinds. Sound leadership has a moral foundation. It continues into verse 13. Good leaders cultivate honest speech. They love advisors who tell them the truth. All right, so verse 12 should come as no surprise. Yet, it should be said, sound leadership has a moral foundation. Something that's remarkable to me, probably remarkable to you, is how quickly people will choose to follow the immoral leader simply because they get results. Friends, results are not everything. Further, God help us if the results come at the expense of our morals. God help us if results come at the expense of a foundation of love. Jesus speaks to this in Matthew chapter 16. He's speaking to his disciples, and he says, what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but you lose your soul? See, effective leadership should never, ever come at the cost of upright living. Should never, ever come at the cost of a moral standard. Contrary to what the world tells us, it is possible to have both. We don't have to choose results or morals. We don't have to choose upstanding living and positive outcomes. We can have both. Proverbs is showing us that if we would just dream a little bit bigger, if we would just move into the standards that Solomon outlines for us. If God's business is being in our business, and we allow our business to be His business, then surely with His help, we can come to a point where we can look at the results and say, to God be the glory, and we can look at how we look and function and feel and treat other people afterwards and say, to God be the glory. Now, I do want to move to verse 13 really quick and the topic of honest speech. I just want to point to Randall's teaching from last week. He spoke on it really wonderfully. So rather than extrapolate here on more speech, I just point you to last week's teaching entitled Better Words. It's anywhere you can find the podcast. Go download it and listen to that. He's actually in the same chapter that we're in right now, the 10 verses following these 10 verses. I think you were in 21 to 30, right? And this is 10 to 20. That said, the words of a leader, they're important. Our words have power. So cultivate your speech. Cultivate the words that you consume. Also cultivate the people around you who are giving you words. That's all I'll say. Go listen to last week. So moving on then to verse 14 and 15. An intemperate leader wreaks havoc in lives. You're smart to stay clear of someone like that. Good-tempered leaders invigorate lives. They're like spring rain and sunshine. Just over a week ago, can you throw that picture up for me? I had the pleasure of riding along with Rosie on her first ever roller coaster. Storyland in New Hampshire, the coaster is called Rorosaurus. As this classic wooden coaster just about snapped my neck and slipped a disc in my back, next to me were only cries of joy and squeals of delight. In fact, I don't know if I've ever heard Rosie laugh like I heard her laugh on her first roller coaster. See, her experience on her first roller coaster ride is a little bit different than my own. For me, I was strapped in against my will. I was forced to ride the highs and the lows, all while screaming my lungs out, something to the effect of, God, if I ever get through this. God, if I ever get through this. I wonder, have you ever been in a relationship like that? Your laughter indicates, yeah. Have you ever been forced to participate in the roller coaster of someone else's existence? The emotional highs, the lows. How much more complicated is it when that person has authority over us? I can think of a few times throughout my life that I was either in the realm of someone or following someone or forced to answer to someone. They were so inconsistent, I once proclaimed to Lauren, I don't care what I have to do, but I've got to unstrap myself from this ride and get off. Like, I cannot do this anymore. Has anybody ever been there? I don't often ask for a show of hands, but really quick, has anybody ever been there? Yeah, plenty of hands going up. You are not alone. If you are in that season right now, you are not alone. See, that description, it's a great descriptor of an intemperate leader. Proverbs indicates that it is smart to stay clear of someone like that because they, quote, wreak havoc. My therapist would agree. So it would stand to reason that it would be pertinent not to be someone like that, instead to be a good-tempered leader. We could go into a definition of good-tempered, but I think the scriptures give a wonderful metaphor for what it looks like to be a temperate leader. They are like spring rain and sunshine. They are spring rain and sunshine. I went outside Friday morning, and it felt like the end of September outside. And I was actually working on this teaching, and I thought, this is what they're talking about. I walked outside, and it was like, I am just thrilled to be here right now. I think I found it helpful that I'm moving through this text. The word that I would ascribe to this, kind of this idea, is just consistency. Consistency. It's vital for individuals who lead, and it's vital for any leader worth following. In the life of a leader, being predictable is a great compliment from followers. See, predictable leaders, they demonstrate similar actions, similar responses, and similar results from one experience to the next. Simply, followers know what to expect. Something I read that I found really helpful is that consistency is not found in providing solely positive feedback or solely negative feedback. Instead, predictability is administering predictable support and behavior across different situations and time periods. I know that's a lot of big words, but in effect, the predictable leader doesn't just give good, doesn't just give bad. But no matter the situation, when you have a conversation with them, when you're in a relationship with them, it stays flat. When things go bad, they are here. When things go good, they are here. When things go bad, yeah, they're probably going to tell me, boy, things really went bad. We should probably improve this. But also, when things go good, they say, great job, couldn't have done it without you. That is what predictability looks like. I'm reminded of the God that we serve as being a wonderfully predictable God of the universe. That we know when we show up, that He is the same. No matter what situation we find ourselves in, the sky is falling or we're on the mountaintop, when we show up and we meet with God, He is the same. He is consistent to us. See, any leader worth following exhibits and projects steadiness and stability. They are reliable, they are constant, they are even-keeled in their leadership. They are even-keeled in their relationships. They are even-keeled in their emotions. If we were to move to the other side of that coin, we have inconsistent leadership. Inconsistent leadership, it confuses and frustrates. Research indicates and experience follows that those who are unpredictable are found to be undependable, untrustworthy, and difficult to follow. Leadership theorists Arthur Sherwood and Conchetta DePaulo believe that if a leader generally acts in a highly unpredictable way with workers in a task situation, it is unlikely others feel comfortable making themselves vulnerable. Read that one more time. If a leader generally acts in a highly unpredictable way with workers in a task situation, it is unlikely others feel comfortable making themselves vulnerable. Any leader worth following regularly models an internal and an external consistency and dependability in their emotions, in their actions, and in their behavior. They avoid the high highs and the low lows. In other words, the things that make a great roller coaster make a terrible leader. Proverbs continues, starting in verse 16. Get wisdom. It's worth more than money. Choose insight over income every time. I love that. The road of right living bypasses evil. Watch your step and save your life. I'd actually like to direct you to, this is a little self-promoting, I guess, but the first teaching of our Proverbs series was me, and we kind of just looked through an introduction to biblical wisdom. That teaching really kind of delves into this idea of get wisdom, it's worth more than money. Choose insight over income every time. So I would really just point you to that teaching. Just Just go back into the podcast, and again, I think it's called An Introduction to Biblical Wisdom in there, but it's Proverbs Part 1. We really move through the what and the why of wisdom. But for now, for today, we'll move ahead. I'm acknowledging the fact that I realize this is the longest teaching I've ever written at Anchor Church, and we're almost done, so don't worry. But I think it could be like twice as long, and I'd be totally oblivious, right? So that's why just go back and listen to that, all right? Verse 18, first pride, then the crash. I love this. Again, who could write it like this but the Message? The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. It's better to live humbly among the poor than to live it up among the rich and the famous. See, pride and ego are the enemy of becoming who God is moving us to become. So too are the enemy of godly leadership. In the words of the prophet Micah, O people, the Lord has told you what is good, and this is what he requires of you. To do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's a really wonderful passage of Scripture, by the way, if you're ever interested in studying a verse. That's a great verse. That said, we've already mentioned service. Servanthood. But here in Proverbs 16, King Solomon, he takes that idea further. Perhaps the most revealing condition of a leader's spiritual health is a servant's heart. Leaders worth following are they must be routinely others-centric. In practice, they don't employ power and authority to subjugate other people. They do not feed the ego of their mind, but the soil of their soul. Leaders worth following, godly leaders, they are farmers. They till and cultivate the ground within them to promote healthy growth and deep roots that only come by way of godly living. It's amazing to me that the greatest leaders in my life have been far less what we would generally picture as a great leader. Something like a coach, like Bill Belichick, is what we like ascribe to a great leader as a coach. Or a military leader, someone with a strong hand. It reminds me of that scene in The Office where Dwight Schrute goes up and bangs on the podium and says something to the effect of, the wheels of history turn on the blood of the martyrs. Right? Like, as we move through the history of the world, great leadership has taken on different standards. And yet, here we are reading through the Proverbs, and we find leadership that describes Jesus Christ. And the whole time, we should have just, again, why don't we start there? We're so quick to go to other things. Rather than being militaristic, rather than being strong with a firm fist or loud, let's just be farmers. Let's just quietly go about our business every day. Crops take a while to grow. So too does the soul. See, servant leaders, they are like farmers. They lead through serving. It's through this service that they enable each person to discover their own uniqueness, their own creativity, their own abilities, their own skill set, and they cultivate that like a seed. They inspire us to contribute ourselves to something bigger than ourselves. Jesus was the greatest of these. And just as Jesus served not just his disciples, but every single person who crossed his path, so too must we. So too must the people that we choose to follow. See, at the end of the day, the job of a leader is to equip and allow others to flourish. A heart of service is the only thing that makes that possible. Now again, just really quickly, for the sake of comparison, I want to look at the alternative. Those who are not worth following. Those leaders who fall hard often lead from a sense of self-entitlement, self-centeredness. They exhibit the effects of not only a self-centered leadership pattern, but an egocentric life. Have you ever been around someone who's fashioned their life around their own ego? That you get into their orbit, and it's like entering bizarro land. It's like this distorted transformation of the world where everything is more concerned with them, their own popularity, their own growth, than any single other thing in the entire universe. Unlike godly leaders who model love, who model consistency, self-absorbed leaders are highly, highly inconsistent, and they make themselves difficult to follow. Again, love is the bedrock of leadership. To move this even further, rich love for others is a cornerstone of serving others. For the humble, the spiritually grounded leader, every interaction necessitates and exhibits what the Bible describes as agape love. Love like that of a family member. Loving leaders see each follower first as a person, then their talents, and lastly, any benefit to the task at hand. Followers are not tools. People are not a means to an end. They are people, just like you and me. They are made of flesh and blood who feel deeply, just as you do. Servants treat them as such. Servant leaders, they lead from their heart. They foster understanding, gratitude, kindness, forgiveness, and compassion. Just as is described in Matthew chapter 20, anyone who wishes to become great must serve. So if you're wondering if someone is worth following, observe first if, and second how they serve. Engaging your own leadership. When you look into the mirror and hold Proverbs 16 up next to your face, reflect on how you serve. If I asked you to describe a servant leader, I have a hunch that humility would probably be one of the words aptly articulated. Truly humble leaders understand that their accomplishments must be centered upon others, not on themselves. Again, it's from Matthew 20. Those who humble themselves, not Matthew 20. This is Matthew 23. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. Through service, leaders give the gift of a healthy self through reverence, through respect, through humility. They place first God and then others at the center. It's like that old saying, the best way to cultivate joy is by Jesus, others, you. It's pretty simple. This is true altruism. It stands opposite of personal self-interest, and it puts others ahead of yourself. This altruism in tandem with agape love and humility, it helps us to truly put others first. The good news is that though that can be hard, it's a muscle. The more you serve, the stronger those muscles get, and the easier it is to serve, and the more you want to serve. At first, your service muscle might be small and tiny, but with enough practice, with enough exercise, it will become strong. Finally, verse 20. It pays to take life seriously. Things work out when you trust in God. Even the greatest leaders make mistakes. The most godly individuals make mistakes. It's easy for us to listen to the wrong voices, to rely far too often on our own perceived strengths and abilities. I think we're often slow to look in the mirror, slow to recognize the places in us that might be lacking, oblivious to our own shortcomings, our own weaknesses. But our passage closes by reminding each of us that we are untrustworthy creatures. It struck me. Things can work out when we trust other humans. But things will work out when we trust God. When we trust the people around us, yeah, things might work out. Tough to say. When we trust God, we can be confident that things will work out. Now, it might look differently than we expect. It might take longer than we expect. But we can have confidence that when we trust in God, things will work out. So as we close this morning, I invite the musicians to come. I want to read Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. It's actually the verse right before the passage that we just read through. It says this: "We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps." I think that verse gets taken out of context a lot of time. But I love that is the setup for what we just talked about. We can make plans, but the Lord determines our steps. Your business is God's business. That passage in the Message version. We plan the way we want to live, but only God makes it possible to live it. So we're provided with the most important facet for any leader worth following. That is a supreme trust and reliance on God. We can do our best to be consistent, to be loving, to be self-aware, to be a servant, to be unlike the Rorosaurus, but we will fall short. We can make all the plans that we want. We can set up all the learning opportunities. We can use the app to facilitate our own personal growth. But at a certain point, our own abilities come to an end. We will fall short. But God won't. So yes, take life seriously. Work hard, find growth opportunities, engage with people that you trust. But the most important thing is to allow God to lead you and to guide you in His paths of righteousness. Only then will we know Him, and only in knowing Him will we become more like Him. Would you stand with me? So, our response today, I know I've said a lot, but our response is rather simple. And it's this. It's this. God, help us to hold this text up as a mirror. Help us to put this in front of us so that as we move through our life, as we move through our experience, that we would experience the goodness of God as we have opportunities to lead and opportunities to follow. Also, God, help us to hold this up in front of us when we choose who we're going to follow. That can be hard. That can be hard. I think we're conditioned to want results over morals, results over anything else. I think the current kind of political atmosphere is one of results over all. And that's really sad. That's really sad. Because the people in front of us, we should hold them to a high standard. We should hold them to this standard. And if they don't meet this standard, then we should find someone else. Now, easier said than done, right? We often don't get to really choose the people that are placed for us to lead us. So, hold this up against them. Hold this up against the people. If you're interviewing for a job and you're having a conversation with a leader, there are tells, there are signs. What's the vibe like when you walk into the office? That's a pretty good sign. When you have the opportunity to lead someone else, go to Proverbs. Am I consistent We all think we're consistent. So let's start there. We all think we're consistent. But ask the question, am I consistent? I think I'm consistent, but are my attitudes or my activities, are they consistent? Am I a roller coaster? Oh no. Am I? Hold this up. And most importantly, ask God to illuminate it. Ask the Holy Spirit to come and to breathe life into this text, into your own experience. So would you join me in Holy Spirit, come. This is our prayer. Holy Spirit, come. Life and help us. Help us, Lord. We cannot do it without you, even when we try. So help us. Amen. Amen. As we respond in singing today, perhaps you'd like to just sing. Perhaps you'd like to kind of sit with this proverb. Again, it's Proverbs 16:10 through 20. You can just pull it up on your phone and maybe read through it as we sing. But just invite the Holy Spirit to speak. And I'm going to do the same. And then we're going to close. And then tonight we're going to have a great picnic.